Uh, Good evening, everyone. For those on the web and for those who are joining us in the room, thank you so much for coming today. We're extremely honored to have Mr. David Orwin fly all the way from Italy to Seoul, to our humble little room here in Bitcoin Center, Korea, to talk about blockchain singularity. As you all have seen in the news and The Economist, blockchain technology is something that is inevitable. It will soon be the very fabric of our society. And we're very lucky to hear on the topic from one of the experts in the field. Mr. Orwin has also published a book recently that I highly recommend. And we can share the link of the book with you after the meetup as well. So without any further delay, Mr. Orwin.
Thank you very much. Okay, so what I want to do is to talk for like 20 minutes, maybe if I can even less. And I will go fast, right? So please stop me if I'm too fast. But when I'm done, what I would like is to have a discussion, right? And we are not only streaming, but also recording. And after we will be able to see if the audio quality, especially if the stream is enough, or we need to go to the other recording. And when I do my presentation, I will be screen sharing, so I will have to do a little bit of things on my computer. And then when I'm done, I will go back and maybe turn around the computer or again use the other camera to capture your questions and our discussion. I want to thank John very much for his very kind hospitality and Emma for the wonderful organization. And let's go in the presentation. So I switched over, and I don't think you need to do that. Okay, good. It's just a delay a little bit. Okay. And so I also like to keep the conversation going, right? And I would like you to keep in touch. And I didn't paste my Kakao Talk QR code presentation, but you can find me on Kakao Talk as well. I like to pick up the local behavior. And what is the chat application that somebody uses in a given country is extremely interesting. You know, WeChat in China, Kakao Talk in Korea, WhatsApp in Europe, or Facebook Messenger in the US, and so on. Now, the fundamental topic that we will talk about is really what drives socioeconomic evolution that Bitcoin is part of, and the blockchain in general is part of. What I want is to give you a context. I'm not going to talk about what is Bitcoin, what is the blockchain, but I am going to talk about more in general how the exponential technologies that we know, and the best example is Moore's law, that transformed our computers in our phones and smartphones, and now is powering the Internet of Things without stopping ever, just keep progressing in increasing computing power at decreasing costs. How this impacts not only computers, but in general, other areas of our personal, work, and social lives. And in general, the fact that our moral aspirations are not sustainable unless there is a technological basis that allows them to flourish. If you asked a slave in Egyptian times or in Roman times whether his or her condition was just, the answer would have been absolutely not. But if then you ask the second question, is it possible to imagine a society that works without slaves? The answer would have been a laughter. It is impossible. Look at that boulder. I need to to lift it and to move it over there. My master told me, if I'm not doing it, he will kill me and somebody else will move the boulder. But the boulder needs to be moved and there's no other way. The master will not move the boulder. There has to be a slave moving it. And that is a simple example maybe, but until we had energy from water and wind that created a feudal society. And then we got energy from carbon and fossil fuels in general that created the Industrial Revolution with the steam engines and then combustion engines. Well, those were the changes that made it possible to mechanize machines and labor that could not only avoid using slaves, but were actually more efficient and more effective for achieving the same goals. So we did not become better people. It's just that the people who wanted to keep using slaves confined and constrained themselves to an economic paradigm that was inferior than not those who progressed with technology. And we did the same, we kept understanding that there were just better ways of doing things. And not only they were better in terms of economic output, it was also better in terms of human flourishing, of the human condition. When 100 years ago, or hopefully 150, depending on where in the planet, we decided that children shouldn't work until they were of a given age. And that having children in mines at 10 or 12 years of age was wrong. Well, that was an important shift that once again was made possible by technology. So the question today is, in our globally connected society, what are the technologies that are emerging that are going to create similar shifts in socioeconomic organization? And what are the dogmatic assumptions we have about society today that will be laughably wrong if looked at after the shift, after the transformation? What we are doing today in terms of how we organize the planet, and it is undeniable that the human species profoundly transformed Earth, is not only unsustainable. Sustainability used to be a buzzword already 20, 30 years ago. But what we have today is we are starting to understand it is not just a fashion statement, but it is a necessary underpinning of how an efficient economic and social organization has to be built, because there is no carpet under which to hide the negative externalities of what we are doing. The only difference between the dinosaurs and us is that they did not have telescopes. And whether I mean literally that we have to use the telescopes to watch out for asteroids that could come and hit us, or I mean metaphorically that we have to use the tools of reason and science to keep addressing and solving our challenges. What this really means is that we cannot have a set solution that we pursue. We have to have diverse solutions that we explore in order to be always adaptable to the new necessities, especially in times of rapid change. When things change very slowly, you can adapt to a given situation and then be happy as it is, maybe for 100 years or 500 years. And we have had societies, for example, Japan, that decided that they didn't want change. And they excluded change for hundreds of years, keeping their feudal society. And it was at the time possible to create a block around an island and say, no ideas should change our society. But today, in a globally interconnected world, that kind of isolation is impossible. The consequence of having to adapt to rapid change, not through adaptation, but adaptability, that is a feature that we have to build to be able to adapt, is that we can create more resilient solutions, more resilient society. And part of the challenge, of course, is that we have to abandon the cages of old type thinking. And especially in those societies that have a profound respect for elders and for teachers and for the prestige and the history and the achievements of the past, this is not easy, because that kind of change will be labeled or may be labeled as disrespectful, as even traitors with respect of what are the traditions of a proud society. So the fundamental thesis of the current transformation that we are analyzing and promoting is that it was the case that hierarchical and centralized organizations represented a great advantage with respect of other ways of achieving a certain goal. Whether you wanted to run a city, whether you wanted to run a large company, this was the way that you really could excel and compete. But today, we are seeing a new type of organization that is decentralized and distributed. And based on technology, this kind of nimble and adaptable organization is potentially out-competing the hierarchical and centralized. And I want to summarize this really from where I was up to now. This is the fundamental thesis of Network Society, that socio-economic change cannot happen if there is not there a technological basis that allows it to happen. It is not enough to desire it. In the 60s, we had huge inspirational and aspirational changes around the world. The flower power revolutions from Paris to Berkeley and elsewhere. But they didn't have staying power because the technology was not ready. And that we are now seeing new waves of technologies that each have the common denominator, the common feature of being distributed and decentralized. And they allow better organization, superior results with respect to the previous one. And three, that this change is unstoppable. And they really undermine what has been the way for nations and large corporations to organize themselves. And the socioeconomic shift is what is going to create what we call network society. So Bitcoin and the blockchain are in this context of an invention. It's not an incremental innovation. Blockchain is a totally new invention. From a mathematical point of view, people before the publishing of Satoshi Nakamoto's white paper they were not even sure that the problem stated could be solved. It was an open mathematical question. So when it was solved, it was a really surprising innovation. Just like when people were using wind energy or fossil fuels, they didn't know that it would be possible to harvest solar energy for our needs. But now that it is possible, this is changing a lot of the things around our understanding. Solar energy is distributed and decentralized. Contrary to a large fossil fuel or carbon plant or a nuclear plant that maybe costs $1 billion. It needs 10 years to build, and before you see a positive ROI, it needs to be operated for 30 years. Well, anybody can decide by themselves whether they want a solar panel on their roof. And a few months later or a year later, draw their conclusions. This was good, it wasn't good, talk to their neighbors, get together. Similarly, 3D printing is decentralized distributed manufacturing, where you can go from prototype to production. Over 40% of those products that were industrially 3D printed last year, so not consumer level, but industrial level 3D printing, went into final pieces, from jet engine parts to car parts to jewelry. All kinds of applications are now using 3D printing for producing parts one by one and very rapidly iterating on their features. LED-based indoor growing of plants and vegetables, but even 3D printing of meat are following exponential changes. Singularity University, where I am a member of the faculty and an advisor, attended in London 2 years ago the ceremonial eating of the first 3D printed hamburger. It wasn't very good because it didn't contain fat tissue, only muscle cells, and it was very expensive because a single hamburger patty cost $300,000 to make. So let's say $1 million a kilo, just to make a round number. That was now 3 years ago. Do you know what is the price of 3D printed meat today? Instead of $1 million a kilo, it's $11 a kilo. Okay. So now it is not a question of price anymore. It is a question of industrial scale or personal meat printers. And we are going to fundamentally transform how food is produced, delivered sustainably around the world. In the West, it is a very common mantra that we cannot afford India or China to start eating meat because, oh my God, the planet can't survive. And of course, nobody says that the West shouldn't eat meat, the Chinese shouldn't eat meat, or the Indians. But obviously, people getting better and better, they will start eating meat. And 3D printing meat, 3D printed meat consumes 90% less energy, water, soil, and it doesn't provoke animal suffering. So vegan and vegetarian associations already confirmed that their members, if they choose to, will be allowed to eat 3D printed meat because there's no animals slaughtered in production. Personalized health, online learning, distributed and decentralized finance. These are all parts of the same wave of decentralization and distribution. And when I talk about or think about Uber or Airbnb, especially Airbnb, I don't see it competing with the hospitality industry. Airbnb and Uber are designing trust networks that are disrupting the police industrial complex, where rather than intervening after the fact and imposing trust through violence with variable results, say the least, in a trust network, the non-compliant behavior has immediate and very high costs. If you give a negative rating to an Uber driver, or if an Uber driver gives a negative rating to you as a guest in the ride, maybe the next one will not take you, and you will lose the capacity to participate in the network. which is global and globally available and gives immediate access to all the features that you expect wherever you are in the world. So whether I'm in Seoul or I'm in New Delhi or in Turkey or Buenos Aires, all over the world, I always stay in Airbnb. I love the variety, I love the experience, and I strengthen the network as if I were mining Bitcoin. One of the largest challenges is to make policymaking exponential, is to understand that we have to accelerate how we debate, implement, measure, and update legislation, whether on a local level in a city or in a global level in a nation or in supranational organizations. It is not possible to wait for 4 years in an election cycle to punish those who made a bad decision. If you think, for example, a classical decision is to change a one-way street in a city that can go in a direction or another and to switch it. Well, with our phones and with Waze or Google Map or any other application that collects traffic data, there is an immediate possibility of measuring the effect of that policy decision and to say, yes, it's good, or to reverse it a week later or 2 weeks later. We are working with an AI researcher in Argentina, Buenos Aires, called Antonio Martino, who for the past 30 years has been applying natural language processing in the legal code. And he has been able recently to have a motion passed, a new law passed in Argentina that is the result of his analysis of 90% of the laws not needed. From 37,000 laws, from 33,000 laws, they are going to have only 3,700 laws. All the others will be deleted from the book. Because the AI system made all the analysis and they were useless. They were not needed. And now it is going to be possible with these results to analyze the new laws before they are being approved. And then, if they are useless, well, a political decision to put them on the books is still possible. But politicians will have to explain why a useless piece of law is being voted for. And transparency and accountability, as it can be also obviously recorded in the blockchain and connected through the Internet of Things with measurable results that are showing up in the territory, are going to exponentially accelerate how policymaking is done. As a consequence, people will be able to understand the workings of politics much better because everywhere people are moving away from politics because they don't feel that they can have an impact. So if you look at all of these things, you realize that they are unstoppable. When mainstream media labels one of these technologies as a fad, maybe because the fossil fuel industry wrote a nice check and the journalist says, well, okay, let's try to prove that solar energy means nothing, or it used to be that Bitcoin would be ridiculed, that it is either just a toy or it is a dangerous tool for terrorists and drug dealers. And of course, the contradiction that it cannot be both never crossed the mind of a very partial journalist. But if you see them all together, you realize that if they are unstoppable, what we really have to build is a very deep understanding of what are the tool sets to embrace them and to apply them in our individual lives, in the ways our businesses and organizations work, and at large in society. And the way we will be living is going to be very, very deeply transformed by the coming together of these technologies that are profoundly empowering, especially in those countries and societies where individuals are exposed with a lack of government services or corrupt officials or a lack of trust in the fabric of society. And there will be an emancipation that will empower through experiential understanding because we can learn these technologies very rapidly. And this is going to give real dignity to individuals. Whether technological unemployment is going to create a society where people will not find work, or very rapidly we will show ourselves to be once again adaptable, and we will learn how to program robots, or we will design completely new types of jobs. Well, there will be a time of quite chaotic adaptation. And the reason why it is very important to understand these topics profoundly is because we need to build solid communities that cannot be exploited by populist, fundamentalist messages that are very easy to infect with a group that feels weak, exploited, and without any power to shape its own future. And we have the responsibility to actually broaden this conversation. Because if I drop an object, gravity will always bring it to the floor. But the way we organize our societies is not a natural law. We have the freedom of discussing very fundamental assumptions about how to live. The fact that this is already happening is actually shown by established interests and bureaucracies not only putting up resistance, often with consumer protection laws. Oh, the public doesn't know really, we need to slow down because they will be confused, and banking through Bitcoin is dangerous because you can lose your money, etc. Well, actually, they are hiding the real state of panic. Just like an immune system can react and then can overreact. If I'm allergic to nuts, my body will say, hey, do you want a nut? I'd rather kill you. You are not going to have a nut. Similarly, there are now examples that are incredible. In January 2014, the state of Hawaii, one of the best places in terms of solar radiation on the Earth, decided that you couldn't install solar panels anymore because there was a law that required interconnection with the national grid, and the incumbent utility company couldn't absorb the excess power that was put on the grid. So no more solar. It took them 6 months of worldwide ridicule before they changed the law, because obviously the way was not to stop solar, the way was not to have to be connected to the grid. Similarly, 23andMe, that gives personal access to genetic information, had 2 years of fights with the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, that wanted them to stop selling their kits because they thought that giving people access to their genetic data would be dangerous, that the prognosis and the diagnosis that would come from this genetic data will always have to be interpreted by a physician. And of course, the infamous bit license in the state of New York, that after 2 years of supposed consultations, came down so hard that now a Bitcoin startup in the state of New York faces regulatory costs that are close to that of running a bank. And dozens of Bitcoin startups not only left the state of New York, but if you're a resident of the state of New York, they refuse to have to do anything with you. But if we understand that this is an unstoppable process, then it's useless to panic. You may delay the change. Maybe you will be able to keep back your society. And just like Japan, after a few hundred years, decided that it was impossible to keep the isolation going, sooner or later the walls will crumble down. And the walls are really just fictitious anyway, because all these technologies can be immediately experienced. There are zero barriers to entry. It's not like you need to build $1 million investments. You just have to be curious and go to a makerspace, go to a co-working space, and ask, hey, I would like to learn about 3D printing, or about Bitcoin, or about social technologies. And you can go from idea to action with zero time delay. Not only that, but with our online tools, you can immediately be an active part of a community that is exactly at your same level. You can start teaching regardless of your expertise. Actually, if you are not a super expert, self-selecting people will group around you because they feel an affinity that is closer to you than not if you had a larger distance coming down with your authority and your reputation, just spouting knowledge rather than building community. And the degrees of freedom and increased choices that this new way of organizing things are going to bring are really an unbounded opportunity that is the blockchain singularity in the network society. And that is why I'm so happy that you are here, because I feel that you will be also participating here. And that is why I am very honored if you would like to stand up, please, because we are also announcing that if you want to say your name. Hi, my name is Shu Choi, and Network Society is organized with ambassadors, and I'm very honored that we have a Korea ambassador of Network Society. So why don't you say a few things about you? And
okay, I'm actually a guy who believes technology should be the message to deliver, create better quality of life for the future. So in order to make this happen, people should be connected for better listening, for better philosophy. So I think it's right time to well connected to start collaboration to the right word.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, so that was the boring part. Now, I really would like to hear your questions, or I want you to tell me, no, it doesn't make sense, I don't believe it, or tell me what you feel are the challenges here in Seoul, or in South Korea, or in Asia, for this type of change to really take root and to happen for billions of people.
I have a question.
Yes.
Decentralization is a new concept, a relatively new concept for some of the conservative societies in Asia, and I was wondering how can this concept be best introduced to government bodies to get some input on how they could best engage and participate in this change while the change gets in place in the society.
Yes. So what I've been doing in my travels and in these conferences is to ask participants to grade basically either for future policy for how favorable they are towards these types of technologies
decentralization
or unfavorable. And
No, it's educational.
They are. We have Marissa here, who is unfortunately going to be ejected. John, did you invite Marissa? And,
Yes, I did.
oh, okay. Would you like to introduce her? I just mute her. Okay. Okay. Would you like her to potentially ask a question? Because no, she can speak as well. Maybe if we can have a. It's just that her audio was flashing together with ours. So Marissa, okay, thank you. You muted. Thank you very much. Okay, great. And welcome. And we are looking forward to your question. You can write it in the chat. Okay, wonderful. If you can formulate a question, I will be happy to read it, or maybe John can read it for us. So back to you. We have a 5-grade scale of policies, either existing or future, promoting, fostering, neutral, hindering, or blocking these changes. And the cumulative numbers from -2 to +2, as you add them up, create what we call the Network Society Readiness Index. So we try to measure how prepared, or potentially how prepared, the future policies that are being debated a given society is. And then bring that index to a city or regional or national government and say, okay, according to our measurements, these unstoppable changes are being slowed down. So we are running the risk of making our society less competitive with respect to others that either in our neighborhood or in the global trade are more readily embracing these changes. And is reversed. Spain is running the risk of really slowing down the adoption of solar photovoltaics as the basis of renewable energy. So, okay. And of course, there is no guarantee that a given government will listen or understand. But a lot of this should be able to be adopted by people who are passionate, even without government support. If a government outlaws certain technologies, like for example, Russia is said to be planning to outlaw Bitcoin if they haven't already, that is, of course, a little bit more critical. But until then, people self-organizing should be able to achieve really a lot. Yes, go ahead.
So I have a question. Right now, there's a lot of worries about a global recession in the future. A lot of states are thinking about short-term goals about increasing the GDP, about unemployment. Regarding the goals you talk about, they seem more long-term in nature, and it seems as if one of the rules would be trying to focus on long-term goals versus short-term economic goals?
So my view, and I'm not a macroeconomist, so if somebody can counter the arguments, I will be very happy to see that kind of input. My view is that the kind of macroeconomic stimulus that governments used to use in order to achieve certain short-term results are not working yet. And not a lot of people understand why, or a lot of people don't understand why. And interest rates are very close to zero. In some countries, they are already negative. But inflation is still not picking up. And the traditional monetary goal of a central bank is to have interest, sorry, not interest, inflation at around 2% per year. But when you reach zero interest rate at a central level, and inflation is still not picking up, you lost your lever. There is a very powerful deflationary force at play. A lot of people are just refusing to consume. They are saying, I have my house, I have my car, I have my fridge, I have my computer. Not only I don't need more, I need less. For example, a lot of people are watching less and less television, or a lot of people are buying fewer and fewer paper books, because they are buying electronic books. The world is dematerializing. Economic output can be achieved at a much more effective use of energy. And what matters is the spreading of knowledge. So we are really moving from atoms to bits in functioning our economies. And a lot of macroeconomic policies don't recognize it. Also, the traditional measure of GDP is really broken. If you wage a war and then you rebuild the houses that have been destroyed, that's positive for the GDP twice over. First, because all the industries that sold arms made a lot of money, and that is positive for the GDP. And then the construction business has a lot of work to do because you have all the houses to rebuild that have been destroyed in a war. But it is absurd, as this example shows, and we have to design new ways of measuring how a society fulfills its goals that goes absolutely beyond the traditional measures, which are just not adequate to these times anymore. Yes?
I know BNB and Uber shared using the shared economy.
Yes.
But some people say that they treat regular taxi driver jobs and regular hotel jobs, and then in the network society and money to for the job things. Everyone using their own 3D printer and manufacturing. And what can be the way the corporation company doing that society? You mean that venture capitalists and some money who have the money invest some companies like Uber and Airbnb. They own the money and they kill other competitors with their money. So what the company and technicians and tech people doing?
Sure. So there are two questions in what you have. One question is, what happens to people who are displaced and become unemployed in this transformation? And traditionally, it was assumed that people could retrain. So if you lost your job as a buggy driver with horse carriages, well, you abandoned the horse, you started driving a car or a truck. And the problem with that vision is that if in the past maybe an important change would come once in a lifetime, so if you had a 40-year working life, after 30 years you needed to retrain, and then for 10 years you would work in a new job. Today, changes come much more rapidly. So there's a need for constant learning, basically, and the continuous reinvention of what is your job really. And some people have a lot of fun doing this. When you ask them, what is your job? They will say all kinds of crazy things. And if you ask them 6 months later, it will be completely different. And over again. But a lot of people need to be able and feel that they are still a useful part of society, even if they are unable to cope with this speed, if they are unable to learn as fast as it would be required. And I think they are right. And we really have to stop defining people that are worthy or unworthy to be part of society because they are employed or unemployed. And pretending to throw away and to discard and to ignore and be blind to the suffering of people who are unemployed is wrong, is unacceptable. So that is why we have to reform the social contract, because if this goes accelerating, the threshold above which you throw in the towel, you say, I just cannot cope, is going to be achieved for all of us. Sooner or later, every one of us will say, oh, this is just too much. I don't know, I cannot do it. For example, I have a chip in my hand. Okay? This is an NFC chip. I could pay the subway here with my hand. I keep my private key of a Bitcoin wallet here, and it's getting more and more precious as the Bitcoin price goes up. I have to be protective of that. But a lot of people, when they learn about this implant, are really horrified. They say, wow, why did you do that? I say, just for fun, for having these conversations. I will never do it. I say, well, maybe yes, maybe not, it depends. But yes, it could be the case that in 10 years, if you don't have an implant, there will be a lot of things that you are not going to be able to do in society. And we cannot create second-class citizens just because they can. That's the first part of your question. The second part of your question is about how can investors find new opportunities and companies that are displacing others. So I'm much less worried about the fate of investors. They will find incredible new opportunities to really blow our minds. Companies are going to die, and a lot of them. At the beginning Around 1920, yes.
I had a question related to that note, but I guess I'll wait for you.
About investors or companies or
Companies.
people, about companies. So let me finish just this thought, and then I will be happy to hear your question. So in the in 1920 or thereabouts, if you had a wonderful enterprise and you were in the Standard & Poor's 500 index, that was really the label of the pinnacle of your success. And you had, statistically speaking, 60 years to be there. So once you were in the index, you stayed there for 60 years, more or less. Today, if you are included in the Standard & Poor's index, it's about 1,000 years. And it's getting shorter and shorter and shorter. So absolutely, companies grow and then companies die. And I think that's okay. But there are incredible new opportunities, in the Internet of Things. We are not even talking about billions. We are talking about trillions of nodes that we have to lay down and then we have to put to use in order to fully realize what are some of the more ambitious visions around the Internet of Things. So it is going to be an unending series of revolutions.
When I'm trying to explain these concepts to my students, one of their main concerns is always, okay, all of this sounds very optimistic, very something that I would be very interested in. But I'm graduating in 4 years, or I'm graduating in 2 years. All I care about is having an income, getting a job, working at Samsung or LG. So they have, for many years, a lot of these kids have had this idea that if I work really hard in kindergarten, in middle school and high school, if I get the right grades, if I go into the right college, I will finally be able to relax and have a stable career for the next 10 years at least, or 15 years. And this idea that companies grow and companies die, or somehow this concept of job security will be very different in the future, maybe non-existent, is something that is really scary for them. They don't care if the world is going to be a better place if they are worried about their income every day, or they feel like after trying to be competitive for most of their life, now they have to be even more competitive in the next decade. So I feel like this vision may be optimistic in the long term, but for a lot of students, they're thinking, but this is actually going to hurt me more.
Yeah, what is your answer?
And I tell them, like, this is a really good revolution. Internet of Things is happening. You can actually start your own business. You can go on the internet. You can think of your own creative ideas. But for a lot of the students, this sounds almost like a crazy idea to start your own business. I mean, in Asia, a lot of in China and India as well, starting your own business is a very, very risky decision. And in New York or in many big cities in the US or even in Europe, this is something that is actually, you find a lot of people who are doing it. There's a lot of safety in numbers. And in Korea and other countries, I think for them, it's not something that their parents would approve of. It's not something that even their friends would approve of. It's something that for them it's almost like jumping off a cliff sometimes. So it's a big decision for them.
I think they are perfectly right in being afraid or being frightened. It is a very natural reaction. If they were not, that would be something to be worried about. It means that they would be blind and deaf to what is coming. Especially the social pressure to be to conform can be very strong. And they will always have a choice to try to go and work in a large corporation that is not necessarily going to disappear from one day to the next. It's just that it's going to matter less and less and less. The fun things are going to happen elsewhere in terms of what really creates impact, and through impact meaning, and through meaning self-worth. A good example of that is the $200 billion of cash reserves that Apple has. The world's most successful company doesn't know what to do with it. The only thing that came to their mind is to start paying dividends in order to keep the stock price growing. It's total failure. Really? That is the most creative thing you can think you should be doing with your money? I mean, obviously they are making a lot of investments, tens of billions of dollars of investments, but they are making so much money that they really are unable to spend it fast enough. To me, what this means is that the power of a small team that comes up with a great idea is going to be more and more precious. The reason why there are these acqui-hires when just a handful of kids are being bought for tens or hundreds of millions of dollars, and if it is too late and they already started a business, maybe they will be bought for $1 billion. The company creating Candy Crush, they were just bought. No, sorry, not Candy Crush. The other one, whatever, King. What is the King? I don't remember. Whatever they do some casual games on the iPhone and Android. They were just bought for $4 billion by Activision. Yeah. So big companies are going to still exist, but the really important breakthroughs are going to be more and more happening in the fringes of the network, in Africa, in Asia, in unexpected places, where the lowering of the barriers to entry is going to really create unexpected results. And it will actually take time before this vision is realized. So yes, it is not something that is going to happen immediately tomorrow.
Actually, I have two questions. First question actually little with the question. So yeah, I would like to ask some comment on this explanation. Actually, you point out that the problem of the people scary about start something by themselves, right? So especially in Korea and Japan, we are in the same situation. I can give a little explanation about it because Korea actually Peter Drucker mentioned that Korea is the greatest country who has a lot of entrepreneurship, but now it's totally changed because end of 1990s, we have a big problem with the economic crisis, and then there are so many parents lost a job, and job security gone, and then we have a severe the economic crisis, cut the money back. So the people, very young people, look at their parents at the time. Okay, there's no safe job, there's no safe challenging. So they growing up, and then they nowadays they are feel like they would like to get a job like give out a lot of salary like Samsung and LG, or they would like to get a job in government. It's very stable, very safe, right? So yes, in my opinion, I think that the real fundamental problem is not actually come from the education. In Korean education system, it's like I would say, it's quite depends on the competition, and also getting a big score to get into a good university, and after that go to the good company at the same time. But inside of this educational ecosystem, there's no less possibility, less opportunity to students, who find their own passion and capability, interest, and their advantage, their ability, whatever. So their parents get rid of their chance to decision. Government or education system doesn't give any chance at all. So my question is that education system, ecosystem in Korea is quite centralized. Education, Ministry of Education actually changing every year they change their system and pass master and criteria. Student always persuaded how prepare my job, my the entrance exam, whatever. So they would like to just keep saying they would like to get a good score, good specification, like good top score, like that. So my question is that how do we make this is change this Korean centralized educational system? How to make a momentum based on our the network society perspective.
Yeah. So I am often very radical in my positions and ideas. In terms of education, and I was about to add this too, and it would be quite difficult, of course, for you. But the question is not even what to do after university. The question is, why do you even go to university?
Yes.
Where for 4 years you are going to be there under the assumption that it will be worth it. And I don't know whether university in Korea is expensive or publicly covered, but in the US, students go into very high debt and already for 20 years, the statistically increased lifetime earnings of a college degree have been inferior than not the interest on the debt that you took on in order to get the degree. So the ROI on a college degree for the past 20 years in the US was negative, statistically speaking, right? Not only that, but for a lot of people, those who are more creative, more interested in understanding new things, often college is stultified. It's too disciplined, it's too predetermined. In the state of California, if you want to be legally recognized as a university, you need to deposit and block your curriculum for 10 years. For 10 years, you cannot change what you are teaching. And these days, that's crazy.
Based on my experiences at Hankook University, they're pretty innovative in the sense that there is a bit more freedom in terms of teaching styles, or in terms of how much, what kind of content I can use in class. But in terms of whether a college degree is important or not, I have yet to find a Korean student who thinks that it was that they actually even have an option of not going to university. I feel like coming from the US and also from India, in Korea, being left behind is a very big deal. If you're somehow less competitive from as opposed to the other person, no matter what kind of job you apply to, it shows up on your resume. So if you have the same skills as the other person, then these small holes will be something that can affect you. I know people who have cosmetic surgery on their face just so they can get a job interview, or they can or they look better at a job interview, so they get selected over someone who doesn't look as good.
I don't know. I have a hard time. I have a hard time commenting, not only because I don't know the local environment, but also because I never had a job in my life.
That would be an awesome answer.
Yeah, right,
That's
right.
actually why I wanted you to come and talk to our university students. Like, a lot of times you just haven't met a successful person who has done all these various things in unconventional ways, and someone that they can look up to and think, okay,
Well,
maybe.
I'm here until Sunday. I'm available 24 hours today. I can say 7, 24, 4, because it's the number of days I have.
You can come
Yeah.
too.
I have this actually, I think related with, actually, with the government situation, politics, education,
Yeah.
everything's in the same, club.
So back to your question. When the MOVE revolution started, it was interesting that a lot of I was involved in one of the first moves, which was AI class, taught by Sebastian Kron and Peter Norvig from Stanford University. They thought a couple of thousand people would enroll in the class, and 136,000 people enrolled from all over the world. And it was interesting because the vast graduates of the class were all from online. And the Stanford students only were from 108 in the graduation onwards. It's amazing. As a consequence, Sebastian Kron resigned from his tenured professorship at Stanford because he said, well, I cannot keep teaching a class as I used to. This is just too amazing. This is too big a change. And many universities around the world, in Pakistan, in Indonesia, and elsewhere, are now taking MIT OpenCourseWare classes, and they are using them as the main lecture, and then the local faculty are like the assistants of a virtual professor, but they have much more time to interact with the students. So I think that's beautiful. Why shouldn't you be listening to the lectures of the best possible professors in the world? And then you have a problem, you have a question, then you have the local support, of course, to go to. Khan Academy and Udacity, which is Sebastian's company, and many others are really enabling today for somebody to assemble a curriculum on his or her own. And those teachers that encourage that, those students that recognize the power are going to thrive. It still happens, I don't know in Korea, but it still happens that there are teachers who say, you cannot use Wikipedia. Which for me is mind-blowing. You know, when they used to say you cannot use a handheld calculator, and then probably they said you cannot use pen and paper, you have to use the clay tablets, whatever it was. But today you can really raise the bar and say, no, it is not about learning a subject. It's about comparative studies and understanding the critical points of view. It really, at every level of education, you can raise the bar and leverage the technology we have to teach better and to learn better.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, good potential of the move because, there's kind of decentralized and, spreading and fair, thinking and, closer to all the world. But one other, situation in Korea, actually, she mentioned on the part about, not only, sporting, actually, Korean students don't good at debating. They don't ask any question. They mostly scared about if I ask any question, if my question is wrong, what if my question is wrong, or if I ask any question, what if other student think of me? If this guy doesn't know well because I ask a question. So these type of things see, often frequently happen in Korean classes. How to make them, because because we always our Korean education system always stick to asking. You have to write score, you have to write answer, you have a 4, 5, the example to select whatever. So because of this type of things, maintain low time, so Korean students always don't ask any question. That's the very serious problem in my.
So in many countries, successful entrepreneurs who recognize this start alternative schools and alternative curricula. In the US, Peter Thiel, who is a very successful entrepreneur, founder of PayPal, and now an investor, started the Thiel Fellowship, which actually pays kids from 17 to 23 years of age to send their projects and then receive $100,000, 20 groups every year, under the only condition that they drop out of college.
Yeah. good one.
And I'm a mentor of the Thiel Fellowship, and really, these are incredible kids that would suffer in university. Another very interesting experiment is done by Xavier, I don't remember his last name, in France, that built a new school called Conde 42, with reference to Douglas Adams. And that is a school that especially caters to kids from the banlieue, from the poor neighborhoods of Paris, with a lot of ethnic presence from Algiers or Arab presence that have been the site of a lot of social conflict, violent social conflict. And in this school, I don't remember the number, something like 2,000 students study completely for free. The entire school is enabled with Internet of Things. There's no class, no teachers. You have a badge, and the school measures everything you do. When you get in, what is the terminal that you sit in front of? What do you type in the terminal? And the only thing you have is certain projects. You just work on a project, and then you have support materials and peer groups to help you get ahead in the project. And then the system alerts you of certain weaknesses. And this is all about learning programming. And it is a very, very interesting, totally new concept of how to make people learn skills that then are really marketable in the job market, that are really useful, rather than an abstract curriculum. So, I am very sure that if in South Korea it hasn't already happened, and you may not realize it for some reason, somebody's there, very eager to do the same, to run some experiment with their own money, with their own risk, with their own idea and creativity, to answer this question in a local way, because of what it means. So, for example, whatever is the solution, I don't know, it could be if you come and this is a very unconventional school, a very risky, and it is not a traditional college, and you will be ridiculed by your peer group, but I will guarantee you a job. I don't know. It could be. So go to your mother and say, hey, I am just starting university, I already have a job. Now, can I go there? It is very different. I don't know. Whatever it is, the local way to hack the system, because we need to hack the system. Yeah.
Actually, we are looking at budget. We have this program where they hire high school graduates into 10-year not a job position, we call it a training program. So they have a year and a half of education that they use, but it's mostly customized classes related to shipbuilding. And then they transition to network. Not the exact same modules, obviously, but yeah, I think those kinds of things tend to be very possible.
Very interesting. I also hired one.
Oh, okay.
High school graduate.
Yeah.
It's good at program.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so I suggest that I stop the streaming, and let me switch over to my camera, I want to thank whoever participated in the stream or will be watching this recording. And we will continue maybe with some beer or something like that.
That's what I like. Decentralized beer.